Hi friends, welcome to our YouTube channel Raj Academy. The main aim of this lecture is to discuss about the TSPSC HMWS question paper solutions in a very detailed manner. If you like the content of our channel, then please do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon button so whenever we upload a new video, the direct notification comes to mobile. If any improvement is needed in your lectures, then please do comment in the comment section. We will definitely include all those improvements in the coming lectures. So why do waste more time? So let's get started. So now we are going to solve the 71st question. See the question here. According to Boolean algebra and switching functions match the following. So therefore, left side there are 4 expressions and the right side there are 6 options. So out of this we need to match. So therefore, out of the 4 options, option D, which is A belongs to N, B belongs to L, C belongs to M, D belongs to P. So now we will solve this one each and everything in detailed manner. See, now I am going to solve this first expression. Let me assume f is equal to x bar plus y bar into x bar plus y into x plus y bar into x plus y. Now what I am going to do is, I am going to do the complement. So f complement. So therefore, the whole expression I am going to do the complement. So it is nothing but a product of sum. So therefore, it will get, so after doing the complement, I am going to get the sum of products. So therefore, sum of products of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 terms, 1 plus 4. And similarly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 expressions. And similarly here, if you do the complement, the terms will be like this, x, y. And similarly here, x, y bar, and similarly x bar, y, and this is x bar, y bar. Means the complements, so you need to do the complement to the complement, and R goes to and goes to R. So we do the complement. So therefore, this is the expression which you are going to get. So now what I am going to do is, from these two things I am going to take the y as common, and similarly from these two things I am going to take the y bar as common. So therefore f bar is equal to, so y into x plus x bar. Similarly here y bar is common, so x plus x bar. So therefore x plus x bar is nothing but a 1. So therefore f bar is equal to y. So therefore x plus x bar is again 1. So therefore it will become y bar. So y plus y bar is nothing but here 1. So therefore f is equal, if f bar is equal to 1, so therefore f is equal to 0. So therefore this whole expression is going to get the result as 0 always. So therefore now the second expression, f is equal to xy whole bar into x into xy bar, xy whole bar into y whole bar. So now what I am going to do is, I am going to do the complement here. So x bar, ab whole bar is nothing but a bar plus b bar. So therefore x bar plus y bar into x, and similarly here x bar plus y bar into y. So now what I am going to do is, I am going to take the x to the inside. So x into x bar is nothing but 0. So 0 plus and x into y bar. Similarly here into x bar into y. So x bar into y, and y into y bar is nothing but 0. So therefore this is what I got. Finally here x y bar into x bar into y. So x into x bar is nothing but 0. 0 into everything is 0. 0 whole bar is nothing but 1. So therefore finally f is equal to 1. So now see that the f is equal to xyz plus x bar y plus xyz. Now I need to do the simplification of this one. So if you see these two terms, there is a xyz common. So therefore now xy is the common. So z plus z bar, and similarly the other term is x bar y. So z plus z bar is nothing but 1. So y into xy is equal to xy. So therefore xy plus x bar y. So again y is the common between these two things. So therefore I will take y as common. So x plus x bar. So x plus x bar is again 1. So y into y is nothing but y. So therefore f is equal to y. Is that correct? Simplified expression of this longest expression. This is a simplified expression. Now the last thing is we need to do the simplification of this one. So that for here now I am going to apply the concept of a complement of a plus b is equal to a bar into b bar. So therefore by that concept here, bar of x bar into y bar into z bar. Similarly z plus xy plus yz. And similarly here bar of a into b is equal to a bar plus b bar. So here a bar is nothing but x bar is nothing but x. So therefore x plus y into z bar plus z plus xy plus wz. So basic formula is here a plus a bar b is equal to a plus b. So here a is nothing but z. So a is z and b is x plus y. So therefore with the simplification I am going to get here a plus b. A is nothing but z and b is nothing but x plus y. So therefore z plus x plus y plus the remaining terms z plus xy plus yz. So if you say carefully here, there is a y is a common between these two things and w is a common between these two things. So therefore if I take the w is a common, 1 plus w, and similarly here x plus y is a common, so 1 plus x, and then similarly z. So therefore 1 plus z, w is again 1. So 1 into z is nothing but z plus x plus 1 plus x is nothing but 1. So 1 into y is nothing but y plus z. So z plus z is again z in R. So a plus a is nothing but a in the R given. So therefore Finally, expression is x plus y plus z. It's the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 72nd question. See the question here. Which of the following lamp has the highest average life? So out of the four options, which lamp has the highest life? Means life duration is more. So option A, mercury vapor lamp. Option B, sodium vapor lamp. Option C, incandescent lamp. And option D, fluorescent lamp. So out of the four options, option D, fluorescent lamp, means the lamps which you use in the home has the lowest life duration when compared to the remaining three lamps. So therefore, option D, fluorescent lamp has the highest lifespan. So let's discuss something more about this one. See, now I am going to compare the average life duration of the four lamps, which are fluorescent lamp and the mercury vapor lamp and the sodium vapor lamp and the incandescent lamps. So now I am going to compare these four lamps. See, the average life duration of the fluorescent lamp is greater than the mercury vapor lamp is greater than the sodium vapor lamp is greater than the incandescent lamp. So here the life duration of fluorescent lamp is generally 40,000 hours. So this is the life duration of this. Generally, the life duration of fluorescent lamp is 40,000 hours, and for the mercury vapor lamp, it is around 24,000 hours, and for the sodium vapor lamp, it is around 3,000 hours, and for the incandescent lamp, it is 1,000 hours. So therefore, if you see from this data, you are going to get 40,000 hours, means a huge value. So therefore, fluorescent lamp has the highest duration when compared to the remaining three lamps. And if you compare the lumen, means for 1 watt of power of consumption, how much intensity of lumen, the light, how much amount of intensity is going to deliver, which is 40. So for a fluorescent lamp, the 40 lumens per 1 watt of power, it is going to radiate. But for the mercury vapor lamp, for 1 watt of power, it is going to radiate around 30 to 40 lumens. For the sodium vapor lamp, for 1 watt of power consumption, the bulb is going to deliver a lumen of 40 to 50 lumen per watt. And for the incandescent, only 10 lumen per watt hour. So therefore, here the lumens is also low, but the cost is very low. The cost is also low, but the efficiency is also low. So therefore, do not prefer to buy this incandescent lamp. So because efficiency is low, cost is also low, and therefore lot of losses. And the lumen intensity is also very low, and the life duration is also low. But if you compare with the fluorescent lamp, it has a hugest life duration, but the lumens is only 40 lumen per watt. So if you compare in the terms of the lumen per watt, here sodium vapor lamp has the highest lumen per watt. That is why it is used in the floodlights. It is used in the floodlights. That's why the sodium vapor lamp is used in the floodlights, and the cricket stadiums, they are going to use the sodium vapor lamp, because it has a more amount of lumen per watt when compared to the remaining three things. If in the question they ask which lamp has the highest lumen per watt, then it's generally sodium vapor lamp. But for the life duration, if they ask which lamp has the most highest life duration, then it is nothing but fluorescent lamp. So now we are going to solve the 73rd question. See the question here. In conductor dielectric boundary, so we need to find what is the relation between the electric field and the electric flux density between these two mediums, conductor and the dielectric. So out of the four options, option C, which is the tangent components of E bar and the D bar are 0. See, the tangent components of E bar and D bar are 0. I will explain this in a very detailed manner in the conductor and dielectric medium. See, now I am going to explain as general. So suppose there are two dielectric mediums, means two mediums which are dielectric mediums, means here the electric field is not 0. So therefore, if you take the two electric mediums of medium 1, permittive is epsilon 1, and the medium 2 permittive is epsilon 2. So there is a surface, which is going to differentiate, which is going to distinguish these two surfaces. It is going to separate these two surfaces. So the surface 1 or the surface 2. This is surface 1, and this is the medium 1, and this is the medium 2, and this is the surface. So therefore, what I am trying to say is, suppose this is electric field E1 and electric field E2. So E1 is in the medium 1 and E2 is in the medium 2. So now I am going to do the components. Now I am going to do the components in the horizontal and the vertical direction. Horizontal is nothing but tangent to the surface, and perpendicular is nothing but the normal to the surface. So it is E1T and E1N. Similarly, let me assume the angle is θ1. So therefore, now electric field in the medium 2, now I am going to the components also. So therefore, θ2, this is the angle θ2 with the horizontal. So E2T and E2N. So therefore, now E2T is nothing but the parallel to the surface, and E2N is nothing but the perpendicular to the surface. So the basic relation between the electric field and the electric flux density and the electric field is nothing but ED is equal to epsilon E. So therefore, as the electric field is a vector quantity, so therefore the D bar is also a vector quantity. But see, epsilon is a very scalar number. That's why E1 and D1 are vector quantities. So therefore, if E1 is in this direction, the same proportion D1 is also in the same direction, because they both are vector quantities. So therefore, same direction always. So for D1 will be the same. Similarly for the D. So D1 is in direction of the E1, and similarly D1 is in the direction of E1T, and D1 is the direction of the E1N. Similarly, here D2 is in the direction of the E2, and similarly D2 is in the direction of the E2T, and D2 is in the direction of the E2N, because they both are vector quantities. So therefore now this is the relation. But here suppose let me assume there is a small surface charge sigma means for unit dA, means for a small area dA there is a surface charge sigma. Surface charge density means charge per unit area is called surface charge density. Let me assume this plane has some charge. So therefore now generally we are going to get here means always, means holds always means horizontal components are always equal. See, horizontal components of the electric field is always equal. Horizontal components of the electric field are always equal, and the relation between the D1n minus D2n is nothing but sigma. Sigma is nothing but the surface charge density. So D1n is nothing but epsilon 1 into E1n minus epsilon 2 into E2n is equal to sigma. If there is no surface charge, on this surface, then we can say sigma is equal to 0. In that case only, otherwise it is non-zero. So these are the two relations for two dielectric mediums. But in the question they are given that here one is a conductor. So if this, suppose this, we assume the medium 2 as a conductor. So therefore in the conductor always the electric field is 0. So in a conductor always the electric field is 0. So therefore E2 is equal to 0. So therefore E2 is also 0, because the components is again 0. So therefore E2n is also 0. So therefore finally if E2 is equal to 0, so therefore E1 is also equal to 0, because electric field, the additional component is always equal. So therefore E1t is equal to E2 is equal to 0. So therefore this is equal to 0 and this is also equal to 0. So if this is equal to 0, so therefore D1t is also 0, because epsilon 1 into E1t. So D1t is nothing but epsilon 1 into E1t, as E1t itself is 0. So therefore D1t is also equal to 0. D1t is also equal to 0, and similarly here D2 is also 0, and similarly D2 is also 0. So this is also 0. So therefore now if you see carefully, the horizontal components of electric field both are 0. The E2 is equal to 0, E1 is also 0. So therefore horizontal components of the electric field are 0, and similarly the horizontal components of the electric flux density, D is also 0, because D2 is equal to 0 and D1 is also 0. But here E1 is not equal to 0 and D1 is not equal to 0. This is only when, because the relation you already know, D1n minus D2n is equal to sigma. As if sigma is 0 also, then D1n is not equal to D2n. So they are non-zero quantities. So therefore only the horizontal components of the electric field and the electric flux density are 100% 0. So therefore this is the correct solution, means the horizontal components of the electric field and the electric flux density are 0. So now we are going to solve 74th question. See the question here. Which among the following is the speed torque curve of an AC servo motor? So here they are given a 4 curves, and the relation between the torque and the curve and the speed, they are given the curves. So out of the 4 curves, which curve is going to represent the AC servo motor? So here they are given 4 options. Option A, which is 3. Third figure is the correct solution of this question. So let's discuss something more about this one. So these are the 4 graphs which is given in the question. The torque versus the speed characteristics. So they are given the 4 curves. So we need to figure out what is the curve regarding the AC servo motor. So basically AC servo motor is nothing but induction motor. So induction motor is, whenever the induction motor is operating at synchronous speed, the torque has to be equal to 0, because there is no slip between the rotor and the stator. So therefore there is no relative speed. So therefore no relative flux, means the torque has to be 0. So therefore here the torque is 0 for only second curve and the third curve. The remaining things are non-zero, because at NS the torque values are non-zero for the fourth and the first. So therefore these 2 curves are not the correct answers. So now we need to check out of option 2 and this second curve and third curve, which is the AC servo motor curve. So this curve is nothing but basically a induction motor. This is for the induction motor, second one. But for the third, this is nothing but a AC servo motor. So therefore now for induction motor, always the rotor reactance for the rotor resistance is always a very large value. But here for a servo motor, here the rotor reactance for the resistance is a very small value. So the rotor resistance is a very large, means if X bar is very small, it indicates that here R is a very large. R is a very large. So therefore here the construction the rotor is a very huge length but a very small diameter. So therefore the diameter of the AC servo motor rotor has a very small diameter but a huge length. The length is very huge, but here the weight of this rotor is also very low, means the low inertia. Low weight means low inertia, we can easily handle, and it has a very speeds. The speeds are very high, and here there is a large length. So these are the important facts of the AC servo motor. So basically AC servo motor is nothing but induction motor. So therefore at synchronous speed always the torque has to be equal to 0, and here X by ratio is a very low value, means the resistance will be a very large value, but for induction motor X by value is nothing but a very large value. So therefore these are the important facts of the induction motor and the synchronous motor. So therefore out of this graphs, third and fourth, 2 is for the induction motor and for the third is for the AC servo motor. So therefore third graph is for the AC servo motor. So now we are going to solve the 75th question. See the question here. The question says that a star connected load has balanced currents with ACB phase sequence of IA is equal to 100 angle 0 and IB is equal to 100 angle 120 and IC is equal to 100 angle minus 120 ampere. So here which of the following, which of the sequence components are 0? So we need to find here what are the sequence components are 0. So therefore out of the 4 options, option D, which is 0 sequence and the positive sequence components are only 0, and means the negative sequence component is non-zero. So now we will solve this question and we will see whether the 0 sequence and positive sequence are 0 or not. We will check here. So in the question they are given a star connected load and the currents in the individual phases IA, IB, IC also they given the currents. So we need to find what is the nature of the symmetrical components, which 0 sequence current, positive sequence current and negative sequence current we have to figure out here. So IA, IB, IC they are given a question which is 100 angle 0 degree, 100 angle 120 ampere degree and 100 at an angle of minus 120. So now we need to find what is the 0 sequence, positive sequence and negative sequence. So therefore by this formula we are going to convert the currents, the line currents into a 0 sequence current, positive sequence current, negative sequence current. So this is 1 by 3 into 1 here A square. So this is the formula. By this formula we are going to convert the line currents into a sequence currents, 0 sequence current, positive current and negative sequence current. So therefore now as we all know A is nothing but operator 1 angle 120 degree and A square is equal to 1 angle 240 and A cube is nothing but 1. So therefore if you do the addition A plus A square plus A cube is equal to 0. So therefore now I need the IA naught. So therefore 1 by 3 into IA plus IC. So now IA, IB, IC I know. So I am going to substitute this one. So finally I am going to get here 0. And similarly IA1 is equal to 1 by 3 times of IA plus A into IB plus A square into IC. So therefore if I do the calculation, because I know the value of A and also I know the value of the line current. So therefore after substituting those values I am going to get here 0 ampere. And similarly IA2 is nothing but negative sequence current. This is nothing but 1 by 3 times of IA plus A square IB plus AIC. So I know the value of IA, IB, IC and I know the value of the A also. Therefore after substituting this values I am going to get here 100. So therefore IA0 is equal to 0, IA1 is equal to 0 and IA2 is equal to 100. So therefore finally what we conclude is here 0 sequence current and the positive sequence current are 0 but not the negative sequence current. So therefore that is the correct option, means the 0 sequence and the positive sequence currents are only 0 but not the negative sequence current. So this is the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 76th question. See the question here. Which of the following coils can be simulated for a solidly grounded unloaded alternator with all the 3 sequence networks? So here they are asking which fault has all 3 sequence networks, which fault we are going to get. So out of the 4 options, option C, for LG fault and WLG fault only we are going to include all the 3 sequence networks but not for the remaining faults. So let us discuss all these faults in a very detailed manner. So now I am going to draw a sequence network for all the faults. The faults are LG fault, WL faults and the WLG fault and the triple L fault. So therefore for the LG fault this is a positive sequence circuit, negative sequence and the 0 sequence. So for solidly grounded is nothing but the fault impedance has to be 0. So therefore here for LG fault all these are going to connect in a series fashion. So therefore in this manner we are going to connect here. So therefore in this one all the 3 sequences are present, but for the WL fault, only the positive and the negative sequence, only the positive and the negative sequence networks are present but the 0 sequence is absent, means the 0 sequence current is 0. So therefore here only the positive and the negative sequence are present. But for the WLG ball, all the sequences are connected in a parallel fashion. So therefore, here all the networks are connected in a parallel fashion. But for the triple L fault, only the positive sequence network is present, but the negative sequence and the zero sequence are absent, which is they are zero. They are zero. So therefore, in the question they asked which faults has all the sequence networks. So if you see carefully, LG and WLG fault has all the sequence networks, but for only WL there is only positive negative sequence, but for triple L only positive, and the remaining two are absent. So therefore, out of the options we can conclude that only LG fault and WLG fault will only have the all the sequence networks, but not the other faults. And one more interesting point is, whenever there is a ground, so whenever there is a ground, always there will be zero sequence current. See here, whenever there is a ground, so zero sequence current is present, which is means the zero sequence current is not equal to zero. Whenever there is a ground, means the zero sequence current is not equal to zero. But here WL, so there is a ground is absent. So whenever the ground is absent, means therefore IA naught is equal to zero. So therefore that is the reason there is no zero sequence network also. But for here WLG fault, it means that here always here zero sequence current is not equal to zero, because there is a ground. So whenever there is a ground, zero sequence current is not equal to zero. So therefore zero sequence network is also present. But for a triple L there is no ground, so therefore here also the zero sequence current is equal to zero. But with this only, again the negative sequence is also absent for this network. So therefore this is a very shortcut to remember whether the network zero sequence is present or not based on the ground. Whenever there is a ground, the zero sequence network is present. If there is no ground, then blindly the zero sequence network is not present. So this is all about this one. So now we are going to solve the question. See the question here. In SCR the turn of time is. So in SCR the turn of time means now we need to find what is the relation between the turn of time and the reverse current. So in the question they have given option C is the correct option, which is more for lower reverse current. See now I am going to explain in a very detailed manner what is the relation between the turn of time and the reverse current, reverse saturation current. So here option is the correct here, more for lower reverse current. Now we will discuss more about this one. So now what I am going to do is, this is SCR. This is SCR, anode, cathode, and there is a gate here. The current is through this is from A to K. So the current is I and the voltage is from A to K. This is voltage V. Now I am going to find the relation between the anode current, means current with respect to time, what is the behavior. So whenever I give a forward bias, means if A is positive and K is negative, the current will go in this manner, so up to certain time. So now what I am going to do is I am going to off this device, means I need to off this device. So what I am going to do is I am going to reverse this voltage. So whenever I want to reverse this voltage, so therefore here this is negative and this is a positive. So with this voltage now I am going to make this device in a reverse bias, but the current has to decay. So therefore this current has to decay in this manner and finally it has to come zero. Then only we can say this device is in off condition. Otherwise it is not on off condition, means finally the current will decay in this fashion and finally it goes to a steady state value. So up to this time you need to give the reverse bias voltage. But if you keep the device only up to this amount of time, if you give the voltage up to only this amount of time, then it is not a perfect commutation. Means always you need to give a voltage up to full. Means the current has to reach zero. Up to that time you need to give the voltage. But if you take away that voltage before that instant, then it is not a perfect commutation. So therefore always you need to be careful. You need to apply this voltage until the current has to reach the value zero. So therefore here now what I am going to do is here now I am going to keep this reverse bias voltage until the current has to become zero. So now this is our main aim. So this is the area charge is nothing but the integration of the current. So therefore I is equal to dq by dt. The current is equal to differentiation of the charge, but the charge is equal to integration of the current. So therefore this area is nothing but the area under this curve is nothing but the charge. So how much amount of charge is stored in the junctions when we keep the reverse bias voltage? So that amount of charge we need to remove from the junctions. Then only how much fast if you remove these junctions, then there will be a less turn of time. If the charge amount takes more amount of time, then the turn of time will be very, very high value. So therefore now here this is a maximum reverse current. So let me assume my R is IMX. So now this is a basic relation between the amount of charge and the differentiation of the current into reverse recovery time whole square. This is the reverse recovery time. So reverse recovery time is nothing but nearly equal to turn off. Nearly, because there are some more terms will be added here, but I am going to neglect all those terms, but it is nearly equal to T off. But practically T off is greater than the TR, but now I am going to do assumption TR are nearly equal to T off. turn off time. So therefore here, this is a relation between the charge and the reverse requiring current. So therefore, so let me assume is equal to constant. So let me assume Q is equal to constant. So here area is, suppose if I assume this is a triangle, so therefore Q is equal to half into basis nothing but TRR into maximum, the maximum value is half into base into height. So half into base is nothing but TRR, height is nothing but I max. So area, suppose if I want Q is equal to constant, if Q is equal to constant, if suppose TRR increases, then I max decreases. And similarly, if TRR decreases, then compulsory I max increases because Q is equal to constant. So constant amount of charge I am assuming. This amount of charge I need to remove it very fast. So if TRR increases means the current is decreases. So if TRR decreases means current is going to increase. So therefore this is what? If Imax decreases means TRR increases, and if Imax increases means TRR decreases. So finally what I am trying to say is turn off. Turn off is nothing but TRR. Reverse current is nothing but Imax. This is the maximum current current which can flow in the anode to cathode junction. So therefore here they are going inverse proportion. If one increases, the other has to decrease. If one decreases, the other has to increase. So therefore turn off time is dependent in this fashion, inverse proportion. So whenever the reverse current is more, the turn off is very less. Means we can easily switch off the device, but the reverse current is less. So therefore now we can take more time to turn off this device. So this is the correct solution of this question. Now we are going to solve the 78th question. See the question here. In electric heating, the frequency and applied voltage are double. The heat produced would become dash times out of the initial heat required. See, I'm repeating again. In the electric heating, the frequency and the applied voltage are double. The heat produced would become dash times of that of the initial heat required. Means the voltage and the frequency are double when compared to the previous value in the dielectric heating. So what is the amount of energy produced when compared to the previous one? That we need to do here. So out of the four options, option B 8 times. Means the new energy produced is, or heat produced is 8 times more than the previous value. So let's solve this numerical. See, now before I solve this example, let me explain a small brief introduction of the dielectric heating. So dielectric heating is also called as the electronic heating. Electronic heating, there are different names for this one. Radio frequency heating and high frequency heating, because in this heating there is a huge amount of frequency. The huge amount of frequency is going to be used by this method. So therefore we are going to heat the dielectric material. So with this heating only we are going to heat this dielectric material of high frequency. Whenever there is a high frequency, there will be a large amount of energy. If there is a large amount of energy, so this heat energy is going to heat the dielectric metal. So example is nothing but a micro oven. So in the micro oven, the dielectric metal, suppose if you are going to keep here in the oven bread. So bread is nothing but a dielectric material. So if you keep the bread inside the microwave oven, so therefore what happens is, now after there is a high amount of frequency, the frequency has lot amount of energy, and it is nothing but an electromagnetic wave, or it can be a microwaves. So it can be another wave. So microwave or the electromagnetic waves. So based on these waves has a lot amount of energy, and these waves are going to penetrate the dielectric material, and therefore the heat will be dissipated on this material. So this material is going to get heated. So this is a basic principle of the dielectric heating. So example is nothing but microwave oven. The dielectric material can be anything, bread or samosa, or anything like sandwich, anything you can keep here to heat these dielectric materials. Always these materials are used in a major way. So therefore now here the formula is nothing but the energy dissipated in the dielectric material is directly proportional to the voltage square times of frequency. So whenever the frequency increases, the energy dissipated is also increases. So therefore whenever the voltage increases, it increases in the twice square times of the energy. So therefore energy is directly proportional to voltage square into frequency. Therefore E1 by E2 is equal to V1 by V2 whole square into F1 by F2. But they are given the voltage increased twice and the frequency is also increased twice. So therefore V2 is equal to V1 and F2 is equal to F1. So now I am going to substitute these values, and now I am going to simplify. So therefore E1 by E2 is equal to 1 by 8. So therefore E2 is equal to 8 times of E1, means the energy now produced is 8 times of the previous one. So this is a small basic concept of the electric heating. It is used in the microwave applications because the high amount of frequency has high energy. So high energy can be dissipated with dielectric material. So therefore this is the basic concept. So now we are going to solve the 79th question. See the question here. The volt ampere reading of a potential transformer is about. So here they are asking about what is the volt ampere reading of a potential transformer. They have given four options. Option A 15 volt ampere, option B 100 kilovolt ampere, and option C 100 volt ampere, and option D is 2 kVA. So out of the 4 options, option A, which is 15 volt ampere, is the correct solution of this question. So let's discuss something more about this one. So this is a single phase supply. So for this load, now what I am going to do is I am going to connect this potential transformer. See, potential transformer, the main aim is used to reduce the higher voltage to the lower voltage. So with the help of this one, we are going to read what is the actual value voltage across this load. So with the help of this one, because our instruments are very low range, means only the low voltage it can read, but not the higher voltage. So therefore, instrument transformers, the power transformer is going to reduce the voltage, and this reduced voltage can be scaled. So therefore, we are going to get the what is the actual value in the load voltage is going to face. So therefore, this is a fuse. So across this is a fuse. Now I am going to take the two terminals across the primary of the potential transformer. So therefore, secondary is going to connect it to the voltmeter. So this voltmeter is going to give 0 to 120 volt meter, but this voltage will be very, very high. So this high voltage are reduced by this potential transformer. And here always we need to do the grounding for safety reasons. So for always we need to do the second, because the secondary has to be always for grounding, because the human is always going to encounter the secondary of the PT. So therefore sometimes he may get shocked. So that is the reason always the secondary of the PT has to be safety, means it has to be grounded for the safety reasons of the human, because he is going to encounter this secondary always. So therefore here always the secondary voltage they will design in such a way, it will be always 110 voltage irrespective of the input voltage. So no matter whatever the input voltage, so the designer will design in such a fashion, it has to be in the 110 volt only, but is not going to exceed the voltmeter reading. That is the design procedure. So therefore here always the voltage ampere reading of the potential transformer is about 15 volt ampere, means it's a very, very low rating. So out of the 4 options, only 15 volt ampere is the low rating when compared to the remaining 2 things. So therefore this 15 volt ampere is a general voltage rating of the potential transformer. And if you see the price of this 15 volt ampere, see, if you see the 15 volt ampere PT in India, it is nearly equal to 6,000 rupees. It will come in a black box, like a suitcase, like a black box. It will be like this one, like auto transformer. If you see in a laboratory, there will be auto transformer, like a small box, like that it will be there. So therefore price in India is nearly around 6,000 rupees. At present, I have checked the internet also, the present is nearly 6,000 rupees here. So in the question they asked what is the voltage rating of the power transformer. So therefore 15 mA is the voltage rating of the power transformer. So now we are going to solve the last question of this lecture, 8th question. See the question here. The mapping of the Laplace variables into z plane through z is equal to e to the power of st. So now what we are going to do is, we are going to map from s plane to z plane. So what is the relation between the s plane and the z plane? So therefore now, out of the 4 options, option C, the right half of s plane is sigma is the real axis, greater than 0 correspond to module greater than 1. So now we are going to explain everything in detail about how to transform from the s plane to the z plane in a very detailed manner. Now I am going to learn in detail how to convert from the s plane to the z plane. So s plane is nothing but a sigma and j omega. So real axis and the imaginary axis. But z axis always has the angle and the radius. Angle and the radius means like a polar plot. So like r into delta theta. Means r is nothing but the radius and theta is nothing but the angle. So this s plane we are going to convert to the z plane. So this is nothing but a z plane. So what is the procedure is nothing but here. We all know s is equal to sigma plus j omega. See, s is equal to nothing but sigma plus j omega. But here z is equal to e to the power of st. So here they are already given z is equal to e to the power of st. So in place of s, I am going to substitute sigma plus j omega. So therefore now I am going to the multiplication. So sigma t into j into j omega t. So therefore e into sigma t into e to the power of j omega t. But here now I am going to write the what is the magnitude of the z. The magnitude of the z is nothing but here the magnitude of this is nothing but e to the power of j theta. Magnitude is nothing but 1, because root over sin theta plus cos theta is equal to 1. So therefore e to the power of sigma theta is only present. So therefore mod of z is equal to e to the power of sigma t. And similarly the angle is nothing but only this is the angle part. So therefore e to the power of j theta, theta is nothing but omega t. So therefore angle is equal to omega t. So therefore now I am going to write in terms of the radius, in terms of the angle. So the radius is e to the power of sigma t and the angle is omega t. So finally z is nothing but here e to the power of sigma t is nothing but radius of circle, and similarly angle is omega t. So this is what here. Now I am going to convert from the s plane to the z plane. What is the procedure? See, for omega axis, so for the omega axis sigma is equal to 0. So for the omega axis sigma is equal to 0. So now I am going to find for different omega but sigma is 0, what is the relation to the z plane. So therefore if sigma is equal to 0, so if I am going to substitute in place of sigma is equal to 0, e to the power of 0 is nothing but 1. So therefore z is equal to 1 and omega into t. So omega is anything, omega can be anything, so therefore 1 into omega t. So omega can be anything, omega is not equal to 0, it can be 0 or non-zero, it doesn't happen, so therefore it doesn't matter, so therefore 1 into angle omega t. So always unit circle, so radius is always 1, so therefore now we are going to convert this j omega axis, we are going to convert to the unit circle. The radius is nothing but here 1, so 1. So for j omega axis, always we are going to get the unit circle, in z plane. So now we will see what is the behavior for sigma less than 0, means LHS. So for the LHS, what is the behavior? Sigma is less than 0. So when sigma is less than 0, e to the power of sigma t is nothing but as it will become 1 by, because sigma is negative means it will become 1 by e to the power of sigma t, means now sigma is positive. Therefore 1 by anything is nothing but lesser than 1. So therefore here the radius is lesser than 1 and sigma is less than 1. So when the sigma is less than 0, e to the power of sigma t will be less than 1. So therefore we are going to make the LHS is going to inside the unit circle, because the radius is less than 1. So therefore I am going to plot the inside the unit circle. So therefore LHS is to the inside the unit circle. So therefore now if sigma is greater than 0, e to the power of sigma t is greater than 1, means higher than 1. So therefore angle omega t. So this is greater than 1, omega t means outside the unit circle, R is to the outside of the unit circle. So finally I am going to conclude here. See here. So for the imaginary axis means unit circle. For the LHS of S plane is nothing but inside the unit circle, and RH is nothing but the outside the unit circle. So this is the easy way. So unit circle means imaginary axis. Inside the unit circle means LHS of S plane, and outside the unit circle means RHS of the S plane. The conversion is very simple. S is equal to sigma plus j omega, and Z is equal to e to the power of st. So if you don't even remember that also, if you remember this one basic one, Z is equal to e to the power of st, then we can easily convert from S plane to Z plane in a very easy manner. So by this lecture, you have successfully completed the 18 numericals, which are the questions of the TSPSC HMWS question paper in a very detailed manner. And the remaining questions will be discussed in the upcoming lectures in the same fashion as we discussed in the classes. So if you like the content of our channel, then please do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon button so whenever we upload a new video, the direct news comes to mobile. If any improvements in our lectures, then please do comment in the comment section. We will definitely need all those improvements in the coming lectures. Thank you so much for watching this lecture. Keep smiling, take care, and bye bye.